Okay, so when we talk responsibility, most of the time people think of it as only as one term, right? Just one term, responsibility. But actually, if you look at it very carefully, there is more an internal and an external component to responsibility. For example, self-responsibility is more an internal component. That is what I am responsible to myself for, right? What am I responsible to myself for? That is self-responsibility. That's an internal thing, right? It's like awareness. When you have awareness, you have both a self-awareness about how you are doing, how you are thinking, as versus awareness of people around you and what you see in other awareness. So there's the same for responsibility. We have a self-responsibility, an internal component, and you have other responsibility. That means your responsibility to the outside world. So we have responsibilities to ourselves for how we are, how we're going to take care of ourselves, and also we have responsibility to all those other people that we are connected to. So what is self-responsibility? It's the things that I have to do for myself to place myself in a position, in a state, right? A physical, mental, and psychological state, so that I can function well. You know, I want to feel well. I want to be able to function well. So I'm answerable to me. And what are those things I'm answerable to? Personal health, success, my own behavior, and my own responsibility to myself for my own joy and my satisfaction. So that's self-responsibility. So other responsibility, that is about you being responsible to those around us. So when we exit ourselves into the world and we start working with the world, we are given power, we are given authority, we are given control over things outside of us, right? So I'm answerable to them. So that's other responsibility. For example, you're caring for somebody as a caregiver, or you're working in a company and you're responsible for some KPIs. And in a relationship, in a marriage, for example, you are also responsible in your own way to keep that relationship healthy, right? So self-responsibility now it's an outcome of our beliefs. Now, what do I believe in? What are my values? How do I see things? And what are my habits? So self-responsibility is an outcome of all these things. And there are 4 domains that influences all these things. First one is what we call the biological, psychological, and the social domain, or biopsychosocial factors. In other words, each one of us are wired differently from the time you're young, right? You have 6 children, all 6 children are different. Even if you have twins can be very different, for example, right? And then psychologically, how we are nurtured by our family and our extended family and our environment. That shapes our values, our knowledge, and our habits. And then they also influence socially. The friends that we keep, the company of the people that we keep. Each child, you put one twin in one home and you put another twin in another home, they're going to turn out different because of the social influence. Now, this is very important because with many of my clients, I find that when they get into the real world, or they live in the real world, we have 3 irrational beliefs. And I will cover that for you. This is very important, right? Because if we have an irrational belief, we have a belief that does not work for us, it's going to influence the way we are responsible to ourselves. And then there are 4 health habits that we have to engage in, which I will also take you through. The 4 health habits are very important to make sure that we develop a certain cognitive capacity to take on life. The better we are at taking on life, the better we are at feeling very responsible as a person internally and therefore externally. And I will take you to this one too, because we all have needs, right? From survival to love and belonging to freedom, we all have these needs. I'll take you through this to show you how these 5 needs can also, not satisfying them or satisfying them, can influence the way we are responsible to ourselves. So let's look at the first one, the biosocial, psychosocial factors. In the bio side, basically, we are all wired differently, right? So if we have a child, for example, who is autistic, for example, or in the autistic spectrum disorder, or has attention deficit or attention deficit hyper disorder, they are going to be a lot less capable than the other person who doesn't have, in the way they are responsible to themselves. They will have difficulties in behaving, difficulties in concentrating, in focus. So that is going to be influence the way they will be responsible. That is the psychological part, right? Our families influence the way we are, the way we see things. So, for example, if you are raised in a family where there are adverse childhood experiences, you are abused physically, or you're abused emotionally or psychologically, you're put down, for example, then you don't feel very good about yourself. When you don't feel very good about yourself, how are you going to be responsible towards yourself to do the right things for yourself? So psychology plays a huge part. And then the social part. So when we leave the home, and let's say when you're young in the school, or even when we are adults, we keep company of people, right? Sometimes we have good company, and sometimes we can keep bad company. I'm an addiction counselor, and I work with a lot of drug addicts, right? And I find that many of them kept bad company when they were young. And from sometimes ages of 14 to 16, they're already into company of young people who are taking drugs. They go into gangs, and then they become youth at risk. So the company of people that we keep is going to be very important. Even the LGBTQ company, for example, right? Those who are gay, homosexuals, for example, when they come out as homosexuals or in the LGBT community, they feel very targeted, very stigmatized, but sometimes even discriminated against. And then they would move into their own social circles, which then forms a new form of thinking and acting, and that will also affect them socially. Then there are these three irrational beliefs, which was raised by psychologist Albert Ellis some time ago, right? And these three irrational beliefs actually undermines our ownership, our ability to live our life, right? The three irrational beliefs tends to link us to the outside world. We are dependent on the outside world for the outcomes in our life. For example, the first one, I must be approved by others to be worthy. I must be the best. This is something that affects everybody, right? I see many clients and they all want to be the best. If they're not the best, they are not worthy. They're not worth being recognized. And they don't even recognize themselves. And when they get into that kind of a mood, then the responsibility to themselves gets severely affected. The other one is judgment. They see the world in a one that everybody else must be doing the right thing. Otherwise, they are not worthy of myself. In other words, they want to see everybody in a light that respects them as an individual, and they also respect them. If they don't, then they are no good. So in other words, this is irrational because you're going to have all kinds of people out there. You're going to have people who like you with people who don't like you, and you're also going to be able to be in that position. So the judgment, this irrational belief of wanting to be adored by people, to be exalted by people, can also influence the way we see ourselves. And there's one more thing that affects all of us, and I see this in all of our clients, right? My clients. Everybody, as they grew up, they started to build an ideal world picture for themselves, their own glass castles, right? What my life should be like, how much salary I should earn, how big a house I'm going to be living, the kind of spouse and partner I'm going to have. I'm going to have brilliant children who are going to do me a lot of good, right? We have built all this picture for ourselves. And then when we start getting to the adult life, we try to chase them down. And when they chase them down and it doesn't happen, then we become very disappointed. And then it affects our ability. So these three irrational beliefs affects the way we are responsible to ourselves. If we get linked, if we get tied to these things, we're going to be challenged throughout the rest of our lives. And then that is the health part. So, excuse me, I get this cough from time to time, because I'm recovering from COVID. So we have four healths, right? The physical health, the mental, emotional, psychological health. This is very self-evident, right? Taking care of ourselves, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, mindfulness, breathing. Spiritual health, where we go out there and help people, and relationship health with all our loved ones. These four health, we must get it in order. If we don't get that in order, then we don't have the capacity, right, to take on all these challenges that's coming at us. And therefore, it affects our self-responsibility. We need to be responsible to ourselves. We need to take care of all these healths so as to put ourselves in a good position to take on all these curveballs that's coming at us. Resilience, adversity, that is what it does for us, right? And these are necessary so that we can take on the challenges life poses to us. Then there are these 5 psychological needs, the last influencer that actually affects the way we are responsible to ourselves. And all of us have these 5 needs, from our Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong to me or anybody else, even the child. Okay? And these 5 needs are, the first one is survival. We must have roof over our head. We must have good health. We must have financial resources to get on with our lives. We must have certain individual power. We want to have a sense of independence. We want to have a sense of winning. We want to have a sense of control over our lives. We want to have love and belonging. We want to be loved by family and friends and office colleagues. And we always want to fit in. We always want to fit in, right, with everybody else. Whether it's from school to the company or to the social circles, we always want to fit in. We need to have freedom. Freedom to pursue our own personal growth, our own personal desires, and not weighed down by emotional and psychological burdens. And I see this quite a lot, right? Couples coming in, marriages not working, their ability to work with the children is not working, their work is not going well, they're carrying all these burdens on their back, and it is so tiring, and they just don't feel free, right? So we all want to be free of this burden so that we can push the limits, explore the world, and grow with it. And last is to have fun. Everybody needs to have fun. We all want to have joy and satisfaction. We need this fun, what we call in psychological terms the dopamine and the serotonin effect. And then that helps us to resuscitate. Right? If we have fun over the weekend, say, for example, or even during the weekday, you learn how to resuscitate from a hard days at work. So those are the 4 influences that actually affects the way we become responsible ourselves. We must be in a good state before we can go out there and engage the world, and then also be responsible outside of ourselves for the world. Now, I would like to share with you some of the trends that I'm seeing, that I have been seeing as a counselor. And I work with all these people, like I said before, right? I work with teenagers, young adults, or even mid-career adults, spouses. I work with parents. I work with caregivers and elders. And I want to go through each one of these categories because I want you to see where self-responsibility is not happening amongst these people, right? These are my clients that I work with, and these are the patterns that I'm seeing. So let me start off with the teenagers, right? They need self-responsibility, really. They need to be responsible to themselves because that's going to be very important to contribute to their growth and also to their own contributions to the health of the family environment. If teenagers don't do this, they're not responsible to themselves for their growth and are not interested in the family, then how are they going to be doing all this when they become adults or even parents or even family people? So these are some of the undesirable trends that I'm seeing today. I'm giving you only a snapshot, not all of it. And it's very interesting to note some of these trends. For example, a lot of young people that I have dealt with, they have addictions, right? And they have poor sleep patterns, for example. The addictions are things like staying on social media throughout the night, playing games, computer games throughout the night, right? Some of them actually get into alcohol. Some of them actually get into drugs, cigarette smoking, for example. Some stay out late into the night, clubbing, for example, right? And some of these kids that I've come to work with also live beyond their means. In other words, as a child, you don't earn money, right? But my God, some of them have the latest devices in their hands. They have the most fashionable footwear. They, they go and stay in hotels. They have parties in hotels. Wow, this is like living beyond your means. And they also then get into wrong company, right? If things are not going well for themselves, they then get into wrong company. They don't prepare themselves for adult life, right? And to them, they just want to enjoy. I remember seeing this video once where a young Taiwanese girl was interviewed in Taiwan, and she's saying, I want to just enjoy myself. I want to go out night. I want to go to discotheque. I want to drink. I want to have merrymaking. Why? Because when I become an adult, I don't have time for all this. This is amazing to see how the need for gratification and the need for entitlement, what we call the pursuit of hedonistic pleasures, in especially advanced and first world countries, get the better of the teenagers. And so they're not preparing themselves for adult life. They're not arming themselves with knowledge and skills, understanding how tough life is going to be for them before they get into it. And I see a lot of teenagers not getting into nurturing the relationships. Now, already as a teenager, they want to split away from their parents and their family because they're seeing them getting old. They want to be with their own kind, of their own age, speaking their own language, understanding them, right? To them, parents don't understand them. Parents are dinosaurs, archaic, right? And so what happens? The relationship, they undermine the relationship. And that relationship is going to be so important for them because that is the only insurance they have for the rest of their lives. So the teenagers are not nurturing relationships from what I can see. They're being disrespectful to the parents and also sometimes even to the siblings. I'm not saying that they are entirely responsible. Sometimes I think within the family, parents can also contribute to the situation. I'll talk about that a bit later. Then we go to the adult side, right? Adults need responsibility because as you go from teenager to adult, now you're getting to the point where you need to become more independent. And the maturation process now is continuing, right? And I do see some adults not doing some of the things which actually constitute self-responsibility. They're not taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility. Remember I mentioned OER at the beginning for their personal lives. For example, they have very poor lifestyles. They don't keep fit. They eat poorly, okay? They stay at home with their parents right up to the age of early 30s, mid 30s, right? Now, some of them will say, oh, my parents don't want to let me go. But instead of getting into work, coming out, living on their own, and understanding what is it like to live life on your own, to manage your own finances, to manage your own activities, for example, to be accountable to yourself, for example. I don't see enough of that happening amongst the clients that I see. So they're still tied to their parents' aprons. Although recently, the newspaper about a month ago, I'm beginning to see that more and more young adults are beginning to move out, have communal type living, share apartments, because why? They feel that they need to do this, otherwise they'll never develop the sense of independence and power and control over the life. So that's a good trend. I see a lot of young adults having very unrealistic expectations at the office, right? They want the boss to like them. They want to be given the toughest job. They want to be given the best salaries and the quickest advancements into positions of authority. They expect all the colleagues to want to love them, to work with them, right? And where are they getting all this from? The 3 irrational beliefs as I've talked about earlier, right? If they don't drop this, if they don't learn how to work with the real world that's out there, it's going to be very difficult for them to take their self-responsibility. And some of them are obviously into personal relationships, as much as even teenagers, right? I've seen a lot of teenagers getting into boy-girl relationships, and there are a lot of this also happening, and more adults are getting into all these personal relationships, right? And they have very unrealistic expectations. They don't understand what it takes to build a healthy relationship. When I get into spouses, I will mention this again, right? everybody has this feeling that the other person must behave in a way to make them happy, right? That the other person must complete them, for example, a Hollywood statement. They don't seem to realize that we all need to complete ourselves first. We all need to be in a position where we are stable, we are solid physically, emotionally, psychologically before we get into a relationship. We don't want to look for relationships where people will actually fill up the vacuums that we are bringing into the relationship, because that's going to be very tiring for the other person. And I have a few LGBTQ clients who have a challenging life. Given Singapore's position on LGBTQ, quite a number of them don't want to tell the parents about their gender or their sexual orientation because they are afraid of being ostracized and being disowned by the family. And so what happens? They stay inside the closet. Emotionally, they're not very happy with themselves because they cannot be themselves. And that disturbance then moves on to affect a number of things. For example, being able to be happy in a job. And I've seen a few of them actually jump from job to job because they're just not internally happy. And this is worrying that they stay within their closet and they live in a very, very stressed out life. Yeah. And there are many young adults who bring some of their addictions from teenage years into the adult world, and they are unable to give it up, right? And obviously, alcohol is one of them, drugs is the other. I've got clients who are into gambling and they can't give that up. There are so many other addictions, and some of the more harmful ones are things like porn, right? Pornography. And these are things that we have to be very careful about, because this is where your self-responsibility comes into play. Now I go into spouses, for example. What am I seeing in terms of trends among spouses, for example? Spouses need to grow their marital relationship, right? But I see when I work with couples who are having problems in the marriage, I see some of this, right? The individuals in the relationship, each partner in the relationship, they're not stabilizing and completing themselves, as I mentioned earlier, before they get into marriage, right? They actually have depths in the psyche, in the structure, and they get into the marriage hoping the other person will plug it up, right? I don't have love and belonging from my parents, for example. So I'm coming to you because I want you to love me, right? I didn't have much financial resources to have a good life. So I want to marry you so that you can help me have a good life, for example. So some of these things are happening, and that makes the marriage a very difficult one, because after the initial euphoria, the 2-year honeymoon is over, the real person then comes out of the closet, and then the other party begins to see the challenge they have on their hands. And the other thing that we don't do in relationships is we don't do sufficient due diligence on the other partner before marrying them. That's going to be very difficult, right? How do you get to know a person well enough to realize that, okay, I'm going to be marrying them, rather than marry them and then discover something new about them after marriage? How do we do that? Is cohabitating going to help that happen? I don't think so. It requires a lot of personal honesty and openness between both the partners to try and understand each other, so that they know what their objectives are, their goals are in marrying, what they see in terms of familyhood. There are some people who marry who actually didn't want children. One party doesn't want children, but the other party wants children, and still they go ahead and get married, for example. So all these things are where we need to exercise our self-responsibility, because we need to know the seriousness of a relationship and how important it is going forward. Obviously, we all don't go to marriage schools. Some religions conduct pre-marital counselling. but they are very, very brief, very short. Really understanding how a marriage works is a very complicated affair. Do we know what it takes to top up the love tank after you get married, right? With us all working like crazy, either at home or at work, and when we come back, we're very tired. When are we going to find the energy to try and snuggle up to each other? Okay? And then when things go wrong, we start engaging in disconnecting habits. I put on here connecting habits. Connecting habits are like accepting the other person as they are, listening to them, trusting, respecting them. Instead, we go into controlling habits. We engage in disengaging habits, disconnecting habits. Couples, after a period of time, end up blaming la, criticizing la, nagging la, complaining la, and then we get into threatening and punishing, and all that is going to be very bad, right? And we also need to understand the other person's needs. The other person also needs to understand your needs. And in a good marriage, we are both working to help each other meet their needs, right? So this is a huge area where couples don't really get into before they get married. And then the other thing is about, remember the 5 psychological needs I talked about? It can be very different between couples, right? You can have a male in the relationship who's very interested in making big money and in going for huge positions in a company to make big money. So he's very much into the survival and to the power needs, right? But then his wife may be more into the fun and the love and belonging needs. So they have 2 very different needs. And if this couple then gets married, they're going to have some pretty high tensions in the relationship. Excuse me. Parents. Where do I see a lack of self-responsibility in parents? In creating a healthy family unit. So again, because we don't have schools to go to, right? We don't have marriage school to go to. We don't have parenting school to go to either. So where do we learn about what it takes to raise a child? We learn it from our own parents. What if our own parents didn't do a good job? What if they didn't have good relationships with you? Then what's going to happen? How are you going to do this? Okay? Because there's a tendency I see where modern parents tend to parent the children the way they were parented. Right? And that ends up with parents and teenagers having a tough time with each other. So they don't understand the need to spend time with the children. They don't seem to understand how to negotiate and establish boundaries with the children. They mix up fear and love. They love the children so much, they fear for the future, and they don't allow the children to take risks. They don't allow the children to fail. All this adds up with not good relationship between parents and children. And the other challenge I'm noticing also is that one parent will have one way of raising the child, another parent will have another way of raising the child. And where does this come from? It comes from the way what they have observed in their own family of origin, with their own parents and their own siblings. So they bring all this into the marriage, right? And they don't talk about this before they get married, right? Because who's going to sit down there, has 2 lovely couples, very much in romance with each other, trying to talk about how we're going to raise children. It's boring subject, right? So we will only address this issue about how we're going to co-parent our children after the children come. By the time it may be late, we have 2 different positions. And I see this a lot. How do you deal with a defiant client? The father will have one way of dealing with a defiant teenager. The mother will have another way. How do you now work together to make sure that we can work with the child and get the child over? There's this tendency to be permissive in our parenting style. Okay, so you have the authoritarian style, the RSM, my way or the highway. You also have the authoritative style, right? The coach and the mentor style. But there's also the permissive style, where you have children who, as mentioned earlier, right? Hotel parties, best devices, the most recent mobile devices, the best fashion and wearing, and by doing this, I see this habits of entitlement and gratification growing in the children. living beyond their means. So when they have this, then how are they going to uh, moderate it when they become adults, right? If you raise children on entitlement and gratification, if I do this, you do this for me. If I do that, I get rewarded, right? If we keep doing this, then when they get into their adult life and they have wives and husbands, are they going to be asking them, I will do this for you if you do this? Then that becomes very difficult in a relationship. So what's the tendency? Well, in Singapore, definitely, and I also begin to see this across the world as I read all the other magazines, and there's a tendency for parents to build the road for the children rather than prepare the children to ride the road. In other words, are we preparing our children to enter into society the way it is, or are we raising them in a particular way to expect society to satisfy them? It's a very big question, and that will give children a lot of difficulty when they become adults and get into the job world. And then there are caregivers, and I have done some caregiving courses myself, and I see some of these patterns among caregivers. Their responsibility is of course, to look after the care recipient well, and so they have some habits they have to review, right? The first habit is a tendency to jump into caregiving without understanding the challenges involved. And that is very serious. I mean, caregiving is a huge challenge. You do not know how long it's going to take. You do not know how much resources it's going to take. So you need to understand how demanding this is going to be. And they also need to be honest about their own capacity to take on the role. Some of them may have their own families to look after, young children to raise, for example, financial difficulties, and then they want to take on the caregiving responsibility. That is going to make life difficult for themselves. They're going to create new situations in the family. And some of them are not clear about the resources, so they end up leaving their jobs, they end up doing part-time jobs, and as you can see, the government now comes around to help people and find ways to help them out. But I think the most important thing as a caregiver is you must be very honest to yourself about whether you can do it or not do it. And all these things need to be taken into account. There are many courses on this one too. Elders is very interesting. I work with a few elders myself, right? And we're all going to get old, right? And I'm old. I'm getting there already myself. And so I have to ask myself, where is my own self-responsibility? And the responsibility as an elder is to try and be independent and functional, right? The older you get, you need to understand what you have to do to become independent and functional. Continue your functionality, right? So I've seen adults expecting their adult life, elders expecting their later life to be as good as the previous life. Nothing is for sure. The future outcomes are uncertain. Things are going to change. If you had a good life before, there is no certainty a good life will continue. If you had a bad life before, it doesn't mean that the bad life will continue. All we have to do is must be put ourselves in situations where we're able to adjust and adapt to the aging process. Accept that as a fact of life, right? Part of mindfulness. And they are not preparing themselves for independence in their silver years. That's what I'm seeing. So they end up being very clingy to their adult children. They expect the children to exercise filial piety towards them. And some of the children are going to be, adult children are going to be very poorly placed to really do this. And then there becomes huge tensions. And I have seen this. It is very painful to see elders and adult children walking through this journey of pain where they are trying to help each other out, and yet they did not prepare themselves sufficiently, especially the elder. Not taking sufficient precautionary steps to be financially independent, or to be physically healthy and functional in their daily activities. So there's a lot of this work that we have to do prior to getting to be an elder. We all need to from teenage years to adult years to even when we're getting to running a family, we must always look after ourselves, self-responsibility to cater to take care of all your four health, your physical, mental, spiritual, and relationship health, so that when you get old, you are in a position to enjoy your independence and enjoy your relationship with your family. I see this a lot. Elders not cooperating with their adult children so as to keep the family of origin together, right? I see many family of origins splitting up as the parents become older because understanding, expectations get in the way, yearnings get in the way, and learning how to understand each other's needs nice and early becomes a challenge. So what then is self-responsibility? What actually contributes towards self-responsibility? Let me just go through some of this, because I think it's important to understand what is self-responsibility, besides the initial definition I already gave, right? So self-responsibility is all about having an attitude of discovering, of learning, continuous discovering and learning, right? Don't wait for someone to teach you. Get out there and understand what it takes for me to adjust as I move on in my life, right? Getting constructive out of every experience that you have. Don't see bad experiences as bad, and that's it, you know, and it's going to be you're doomed for life. See bad experiences as opportunities for you to learn, to grow, to adjust, to be more resilient in your life. Be very curious. It's very important to be curious. It's one of the fundamental attitudes of mindfulness, learning how to be curious, to understand why life is the way it is. Why is it changing? What does it take to work with an adult child? What does it take to work with a teenager when they become more defiant? Be curious, because that curiosity will help you, right? And then every time you get an opportunity for growth, take it, right? If a course comes up and you think you can learn something, go for it. If you have an opportunity to talk to somebody about caregiving, please go ahead and ask more questions, because you're not too sure whether you're going to get into it or not. So there will be many opportunities to learn and to grow. Grab them as soon as you see them. Be courageous to look into yourself. This is one of our biggest challenges of self-responsibility. We don't want to look inside ourselves because we are so afraid of what you're going to find out. We are so afraid of our weaknesses. We are so afraid of our frailties. We are so afraid of our vulnerabilities. And many people also don't want to come to terms with their capacity and their potential. When they go to work, for example, they expect everything to be hunky-dory, fast mode of advancement. Sometimes we have limitations, and we must be able to accept that. Don't expect or wait for someone else to grow you. That is not self-responsibility. We need to be able to ask ourselves, generally speaking, what do I want in my life? Where do I want to go? How do I get it? What do I have to do to get there? And I think that is very important. Be proactive with yourself and your relationships. Well, always ask yourself, okay, this is me, right? I'm now 20, I'm going to become 30 in 10 years. How do I get there? What do I have to do to get there in a good way, in a healthy way? If I'm going to have relationships, okay, now I have this wonderful young lady next to me. I'm falling in love with her. But what does it really take for me to marry her and then live with her and age with her forevermore? What are the things, what are the skill sets, what are the knowledge that I must have to be able to age with her, right? When I get into my job, am I going to stay in one job? Am I going to change 10 jobs in my life? If I'm going to stay in one job and I want to make it a career for me, how do I make myself relevant? What courses do I have to go to put myself in a position where I will always have a job, right? And this is something we all tend to do. We look around and we say, wow, that person's so nice, so good. I want to be like them. Too late, man. They're already taken up. What we need to do is be ourselves, look at ourselves every day in the mirror and ask ourselves, this is you, you know. So what are you going to do to get there? What do you want to do for yourself to be successful, to have a life of joy and satisfaction? Is reaching for the moon going to help you get there? Or stopping somewhere halfway is going to be enough for you? Very serious questions we have to ask for ourselves. That is self-responsibility. Don't engage in disconnecting habits, especially when you're going to work with yourself and you're going to work with others. And you can always blame yourself. You can always criticize yourself. You can be your worst enemy, Don't do that because it's not going to help yourself. If you're going to work with other people, especially family, friends, office colleagues, right? Learn how to connect, trust, respect. Don't get into this kind of disconnecting habits. Blaming when things go wrong, complaining when things don't go your way, criticizing and judging a person just because they're not giving you happiness, right? Nag, it's not going to work. It never works, right? Don't threaten, don't punish just because you want to have your way. These things don't help. When you get stuck, go and figure out what is happening. I suggest this to a few people. Have your own board of directors, okay? You are your company, okay? Like Frank Singam Private Limited, right? I want to grow this company. I want to make it stronger, healthier, right? So how do I get that done? Can I just myself make it happen? Or do I need a board of directors, a few trusted people who can tell me, give me various opinions, give me various feedback so that I know I can take all that into account when I have to do something for myself. So if you get stuck, have a board of directors to make you unstuck. OAR, I mentioned already, ownership, accountability, and responsibility. That is the final word. Any relationships, we have our own part to play in any relationship. If it fails, we have a part to play in the failing relationship. I'm not saying that ultimately it's always that you who has to bear the responsibility. Of course, the other party too. Both parties need to take OAR. Any relationship that's failing, both parties have to work on. But you have definitely your own part to play in that relationship. I like this saying, actually. It's an American saying, right? Because we have so many things to think about in our life. There's so many things that's going on in our heads, right? So sometimes they say, just shut up, lah. Up here, just shut up, lah. Suit up, lah. Wear your Iron Man suit, your Batman suit. Just suit up and just show up in life. Just show up. That means take life on. Don't be afraid of it. Don't kowtow to it, right? Don't run away from it. Ask if this is what self-responsibility is all about. You have to show up. Why is it important? If you are self-responsible, I think we have better control over our lives. Okay? Less instability, less chaos. And because of that, your life will be more satisfying. And when it's more satisfying, it will bring success, right? There's also a higher productivity in your day-to-day life, not only in your office, in your relationships, with your own health, for example, ultimately even your wealth, right? As you become more self-aware. If you are self-responsible, you look at yourself and everything comes from me. If I don't do things for myself, I can't do things for anybody else, right? And to be able to relate to the world and to do good to the world, if I'm going to be self-responsible, it requires me to be honest to myself. It requires me to be organized. It requires me to be fit, physically and mentally fit to take on the pressures. And I have to do enough, take on enough projects, enough initiatives to be and complete them so that I can build this confidence in myself. Maybe even learn from others so that we can pick up on the confidence. Confidence comes from doing something after another, making success. When you have success, you become more confident. When you have become more confident, you generate a passion for life. And I think if you have self-responsibility, you will have this very healthy level of self-esteem. You look at yourself and you like yourself, self-worth, right? If you can like yourself and you do things well, the other people are going to look at you and they're going to say, good person. Then you have this sense of self-esteem, love and belonging, fitting in, right? And when all that happens, You will start enjoying the life and get the life that you want. And you become responsible for your own choices, behaviors, and habits. Self-responsibility is something that is so crucial. It's like loving yourself. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love other people, for example? And if you do, if you show yourself to be responsible, I'm sure it will strengthen all your relationships. People see you as a trusted person. People see you as a person they want to have on their board of directors, for example. And it will help us realize our capacity and potential. If I know who I am, I know my capacity. I cannot be a Prime Minister of Singapore. Neither can I be a CEO of a huge business company. I don't have that. But I can try and be as good a therapist as I can. I can try and be as healthy a person as I can. I will go out there and see what I can do for people on the ground that will give me more purpose and meaning, right? So I begin to understand where I am in life after a while. If I'm more self-responsible, because I want to make things happen for me, right? Then I will see what I can do, and in what I can do, I can also see my potential, and that's all I need to do. And if you do that, you suddenly feel that all these emotional and psychological burdens are lifted from your back. If you're very happy, then suddenly you feel free, right? You feel free to do things. You feel so very complete that when crisis happens to you, you don't react. You look at it and you respond because you have so much faith and confidence in your ability to take on life. That's what self-responsibility brings. I wanted to show you this one because I think this is, I used to be a fighter pilot, right? 31 years as a fighter pilot. I flew 3,000 hours. I've flown in America, England, Australia, New Zealand. I've been through ASEAN, right? Flown in Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. We took our aeroplanes to all these places and flew. And when you are a fighter pilot, I think there are some very strong self-responsibilities. You cannot take up a multi-million-dollar aircraft and run it around like a toy. Yeah? There is some responsibilities that the government has put in my hands, right? And these are my fighter pilot responsibilities, right? I need to know my skills and my limits. I know what I can do with the aircraft, what I can't. I need to know the aircraft and its systems, its emergency procedures, because it's going to save my life. I need to have faith in my ability to fight, right, in a fighter aircraft. I need to know the rules and regulations and be able to stick to them. Don't bust them, right? I need to know the missions well. Whatever mission I'm going to go out there and do, fight against aeroplanes in the sky, knock out targets on the ground. I need to know my mission well. I need to know the skills I need to do it well. And I have to develop those skills. And I need to know the planning that's necessary to get the job done. I need to be able to work with all my comrades in arms, all my leaders, my wingmen, my air traffic controllers, my technicians. I need to work with them. And I need to cooperate and coordinate actions with them and facilitate the outcome of a mission. So I must do all this by working with the other people. And this is a very important point for me as a fighter pilot, right? A good pilot, a superior pilot, uses his judgment, his own personal superior judgment, right? His self-responsibility, right? To avoid situations which require the use of his superior skills. I don't want to put myself in an aeroplane in a situation where I have to use God-given skills, which I do not know at that moment in time whether I have or not. And I may compromise my own safety. I may actually waste an aircraft, an important combat arm in the government, and I may even hazard somebody else's life. Right? So this is self-responsibility as a fighter. I wanted to raise this because I wanted to reflect that as to a person on the ground. This is what a person on the ground. How does it reflect? How does it translate to a person on the ground, right? So for a person on the ground, they need to know their strengths and weaknesses. We all need to know your strengths and weaknesses. Even as a therapist, I need to know my capacity, I need to know my potential. And I need to know how to work, know my family, my community, and how they operate, the culture within it, right? If I know how they operate, I will stay out of turbulent waters, right? I need to have my own self-confidence as a person to navigate the challenges in life. I need to know all the written and unwritten rules in the family and the community. I need to know my life goals. I need to know what knowledge I need to have, the values I need to have to achieve them. And the plans must be doable, they must be realistic, right? I need to understand my family, friends, and colleagues well. And I need to cooperate and facilitate outcomes, right? Same here. And this is important, just like for the pilot. I don't want to put myself in situations that requires me to use knowledge and skills to get out of that situation, which I may not have. Now, for example, do you know what it takes to be a husband even when you're not even prepared for it? Do you know how to be a father when you didn't even go to school for it? You know how to run a family when nobody taught you how to do that except your parents, for example. So don't put ourselves in situations that requires us to use knowledge that we don't have. That is what self-responsibility is all about. And I want to just reflect it here again without comparing it to a pilot. It basically comes down to knowing you, knowing the external environment, other people, and knowing how do I work with them so that I can make this whole thing work for me, right? But the important start point is here, knowing you, your self-responsibility. Without this, nothing else can happen. How to keep self-responsibility going? Well, there's a lot of discipline. If you want to really do well, you want to complete yourself, you need to have a lot of discipline, a lot of persistence, a lot of awareness. You need to be honest and committed to this job of being responsible. You have to live up to the promises that you make to yourself and to other people. And you need to manage your time well so that you don't take too much. You can overburn, you can overwhelm. If you are self-responsible, you won't allow yourself to be overburdened. You don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed. You have to negotiate with the bosses, your reporting officers if necessary, so that you don't get overburdened. Because what's the use? If you get overburdened, how are you going to serve anybody? Nobody, right? Work-life balance, work-life harmony is very necessary so that we can maintain some sanity in our lives. Keep the four health going, right? Your physical, your mental, your spiritual, and relationship health going. And always work, every time work towards meeting and satisfying your 5 psychological needs. Survival, power, love and belonging, freedom and fun. And when I will do this, I do this every time on my birthday. Every time on my birthday, I have a quiet moment to myself and I'll ask myself, Frank, are you meeting all your 5 psychological needs? Even if I don't meet one, that is going to make my life a little bit miserable because we all need those 5 to be centered, to be balanced. It eventually comes down to this. If we all can take care of our day, I think our life will take care of itself. We don't have to plan too far ahead. Okay? You do all this, you'll be taking care of your day. It's a very important concept to try and bring on board. And then there are you can ask these following questions to keep your self-responsibility to yourself going, right? To be accountable to yourself for your own responsibility, right? Ask yourself sometimes this question from time to time. Am I self-responsible right now? Have I missed out anything that I should be doing for myself? Are my thoughts, my feelings, and my behavior consistent with what I want to achieve in this moment in my life? Or am I just following blindly other people? All these TV dramas, all these movies, all these romance novels. Am I blindly following what other people are doing when we know that it does not apply to me, when I know that it does not serve me well? That introspection is very important. And then self-talk. Sometimes we need this self-talk, right? We need to look at, am I responsible for my emotions? I do not want to unload my anger and my negative habits to other people. Am I caring for my health? Am I managing my time? Am I responsible for taking care of my day? Am I doing that well? Am I responsible? Am I doing it? If not, then I have to review what I'm doing. Right? For the children, I think It's so important to teach them self-responsibility from a very young age. But it's important for the parents to be good role models. Look back on all those questions that I raised earlier. Start early by showing your children through cooperating with others in the family and helping other people in the extended family. This is what self-responsibility is all about. Being the good person in the family. Learning self-responsibility to family meeting. I love this family meeting. You need to have family meetings where you can discuss how was my week, which was the bad part of my week, what did I do about that? And the children can listen to this and children can even say, what was your bad part in your week and how did you deal with that? That is self-responsibility. And you'll be teaching them OAR, right? Ownership, accountability, and responsibility. Don't do things for them that they can't do for themselves. Don't rescue them when they fall down. Don't bail them out. If they can sort it out and get out themselves, let them do that. But create a situation and an environment where they can talk to you about it, right? Ask their children. Don't order them. Help them understand the consequences of their decisions and their actions. And sometimes as parents, you got to take calculated risks. You got to be able to sit down with a child and say, you want to do this? Go, okay? What do you think will happen to you? I will tell you what can happen to you. After that, the discussion is over, your decision. If you fall down, you know what's going to happen. Go ahead, deal with it. And if you use a lot of empathy and be very genuine with your children and you don't judge them, right? I think you will be creating this rapport with them where they can understand the need to come from within themselves to be able to relate to you. Cultivate understanding of themselves. So important for them to know what is my capability, what is my capacity, what can I do and what I can't do. And the earlier they can come to terms with this, the better, right? Can I really give you A grades? Or at the maximum, I can only give you B grades, right? Can I really be the doctor you want me to be? Or can I just be a technician in the Air Force? Whatever it is, their understanding of themselves is very important. And that is the self-responsibility they need to carry with them. Give them projects that will carry responsibilities so that they can learn how to be self-responsible, to be able to carry on projects. So what are the symptoms of irresponsibility? So if you look at your children or you look at somebody else, your guardian over, you see any lack of interest, any lack of interest in the well-being of others around them, that's irresponsibility, right? If they are engaging in a lot of disconnecting habits, right? Blaming, complaining, nagging, criticizing, threatening, punishing, that's not good. That's irresponsible. If they're missing on the task and they're not taking the deadline seriously, if they're avoiding challenging tasks and projects, and they're not wanting to take risks, that's irresponsibility. If they avoid taking initiatives, and being dependent on others to get things done for themselves, whether it's at home, whether it's in the school, or whether it's in the office, that's irresponsibility. If they lack trust in the family or in the colleagues or in the community or society members, if they lack trust, they're beginning to develop a sense of irresponsibility. They need to understand what's going on and to redevelop that trust again. Making excuses, obviously, is a sign of irresponsibility, right? It's not my fault, that's unfair, that's beginning to show, right? And waiting for the stars to align. Everybody waiting for the stars to align so that they can have the perfect life that they have planned for themselves. Remember, that perfect life does not exist. What exists is the real life out there. You got to make the best out of that. How do we turn it around? Cultivate a growth mindset. Be willing to receive good feedback. That is also for ourselves. If we are irresponsible, we need to know our roles and responsibilities and where we are accountable for them. Right? We need to engage in connecting habits if we want to be responsible. Okay? And we can turn it around by trusting and by respecting, by supporting and encouraging. We empower individuals. We don't enable their bad habits. Empower their OAR, but don't enable their bad habits. And don't micromanage. At the end of the day, everybody has OAR over their lives. And we have no right to take over their lives and run it for them. Then they don't have self-responsibility at all. Does self-responsibility change as you go through life? Yes. Because the responsibility changes from the time when you're a teenager, your responsibility to yourself versus when you're a family man is very different. So we need to know that this thing will change. So you need to develop this early so that they can learn how to adjust, adapt, evolve it as they go through life. Can it remain constant? Yes. There's one particular habit which like let's say when children are made to parentify very early, they're made responsible to look after their siblings. And they're given responsibility to look after the family very early in their life. It can have two effects, you know. One effect is that when they take this responsibility, what we call parentification, when it happens early, then they will control people's life for a very long time. And I've seen that. I've seen where individuals get so obsessed with parentification, they control everybody's life until even the children become adults. And that does not work for the family. Then on the flip side, you have those who have this ability to be a leader, despite the fact that they are parentified very early, but everybody gravitates around them and they continue to be the family patriarch for a very long time. So it all depends on the individual and it all depends on the circumstances. Traumatic developments like a crippling accident, recovering from addiction, these traumatic developments or significant emotional events can actually alter. So you may have a very playful child, but suddenly something happens to them in their life and they suddenly become very responsible. So it's possible. There are genetic effects in us. There are certain acumens in us that remain very hidden or not switched on until something happens in your life. So yes, don't give up if a person is irresponsible. Work on them, turn them around, and always have hope that maybe something will happen to make them more aware. So I'll finish it off with a few quotes here, which I think were very useful. People who blame others for their failures never overcome them. They simply move from problem to problem. To reach your potential, you must continuously improve upon yourself, self-responsibility. And you can't do that if you don't take self-responsibility for your actions and learn from your mistakes. This one is pretty long, and I just saw that today and I thought I would share this with you. Because this is ultimately what the ultimate reward for being self-responsible. Have a little faith in your ability to handle whatever is coming down the road. Believe that you have the strength and the resources required to tackle whatever challenges come your way. And know that you always have the capacity to make the best of anything. Even if you don't want it or ask for it, even if it seems scary or hard or unfair, you can make something good of any loss or hardship. You can learn from it, grow from it, help others through it, and maybe even thrive because of it. The future is unknown, but you can know this for sure. Whatever is coming, you got this. If you have, that is what self-responsibility. You got this, right? Shut up, suit up, show up. Remember? Yeah. The last slide. Everything in your life is a reflection of the choice you have made. If you want to have a different result, make a different choice. This is the ultimate reflection of self-responsibility, isn't it?